The co-founder of DCReport.org put it together for David Cay Johnston, our regular Tuesday visitor. So proud and honored to have him in the mix. Hey, David.
Hello there. Listen, I want to say one thing about your previous segment.
Yes, sir.
The Danish modern furniture that's behind me and the table I'm sitting at. When my wife and I got together more than 40 years ago, I bought this. And she took one look at it and said, "How much?" And I said, "Doesn't matter." And she said, "How much?" And said, you know, what it was. And she broke out her checkbook and paid half of it. And we have always, through thick and thin, and there have been periods that were really thin, the day we had $1.78 left in our bank account. That's the way it's been. We're a unit, and if you're unable to be a unit, then maybe, you know, you shouldn't be married, or you should recognize that what you have, as many wealthy people do, is a commercial marriage.
Well, I know you didn't mean that as a joke, but it just sounds funny. But I in the context of our leaping off point, really, for that Forbes piece on those considerations to which you've referred, which is they're associated with a real understanding of home finances and the relationship finances. The jumping off point was the announced marriage of Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos, and the likely conversations that won't really, I suspect, have to take on the kind of significance, you know, that you had with your wife or with others. Most of us will probably have to deal with. They seem pretty well set, I guess might be a way to put it. But
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Hey, David Cay Johnston, I wanted you to see something, and it was Tony. Do you have it? The from Ty Cobb, the former Trump attorney. Can you run that? Here's a little piece of what Ty Cobb said about Trump and his legal situation. You have it, Tony, or no? Here it is.
I think this obstruction case is a tight case. And yes, I do think he'll go to jail. Trump keeps lying about what the law is. Apparently, 16 different government officials reminded him of the process. He totally ignored that and believes that the mere fact he took them declassifies. That's not the law. Everybody will be watching if the feds come after him, and the feds are coming, and I think they're coming fast.
So now I want to ask you to comment on that and the growing legal problems that Trump seems to be having.
Well, Ty Cobb, unlike his crude ancestor, is a very sophisticated bulldog lawyer who was representing Donald at one time. And I believe he's exactly correct about what's happening here. Donald has expressed this magical thinking that if I just think a document is declassified, that declassifies it. That's just not how it works. And Trump's problem is that he lied and denied. I have a few national security documents in my house here. Many people do. The government isn't going to care about that. What they're going to care about is if you have the document improperly and you lie and deny about it. Now, Obama, Biden, and Pence, and apparently every president going back to Kennedy, has done things where they kept national security documents, or they forgot them and left them in their home, which tells us that, you know, a lot of local libraries are more diligent about keeping track of books than we are of these sensitive documents. But the issue isn't mere possession. The issue is lying and denying. And Trump got his lawyers to lie and deny. And what's really going to kill Donald on this matter, and I mean that metaphorically, and what Ty Cobb was talking about, is that a federal court of appeals has upheld breaking the attorney-client privilege between Donald and his lawyer, Evan Corcoran. There are other lawyers too, but the one that matters here is Evan Corcoran, under what's called the crime fraud exception. You've got confidentiality with your lawyer unless you're plotting a crime. And in that case, no, that goes away. And Evan Corcoran turned over 50 pages of highly detailed notes that document that Donald Trump knew and was told repeatedly that he cannot keep these documents, that he lied about them. In addition, Trump's valet is on video moving boxes around of these national security documents after Trump had his lawyers certify that he didn't have any such documents. I would say the government has got a lot of leverage over his valet, and his valet is going to be offered a real simple choice. You can spend the next 20 years to the rest of your life in federal prison, or you can cooperate. And that's Mark, that's Donald's real problem, is that the people around him who've operated under Trumpian omerta are deciding that they're going to talk rather than go to jail for him. And they may go to jail anyway, but not for nearly as long.
Does David, you're an accessory the way, we know it in a higher profile way with, because it's been on television and in movies so much. If you help with a murder or you cover a murder or you drive away from it, you're charged with murder as well. Is being an accessory to these various things associated with obstruction, that's the legal sword that hangs over them?
Yes, exactly. And in the case of the valet, there may be an important issue about criminal intent, mens rea. That's not going to be a problem with Trump anymore. Once you can show that you were told what the law is, you then violated the law, you then lied and denied about violating the law, that's very clear evidence to a jury of criminal intent. And I think Ty Cobb is exactly right. Trump will be convicted. And now whether he'll go to jail is going to be up to a judge. It is entirely conceivable a judge would give him home confinement. Hopefully, if that happens at Trump Tower rather than Mar-a-Lago. There's plenty of precedent for that. There's a guy right now in New York City who has not been allowed to leave his apartment. He can't even walk down the hall to the trash bin because of a dispute over Chevron oil in Peru. And the judge finding that he has not been forthcoming about supplying some documents.
You're talking about the attorney involved in that case who is now under house arrest.
Case. He's not accused of any crime.
Right. That's a hit job. Just not to digress, but that's a hit job, David, on that guy.
This is an effort to, I think, improperly leverage this guy on behalf of Chevron, which bought another oil company that was doing all sorts of corrupt things. But my fundamental point is that Trump doesn't have any defenses here, and Donald is always shooting himself in the foot. I mean, he just lost $5 million judgment to E. Jean Carroll in her second libel case. The first one hasn't gone to trial. She is now seeking to amend that one because, once a jury finds that you wronged someone, people, even if they don't like it, stop repeating it. And what did Trump do as soon as the jury decision came out? He went after E. Jean Carroll again, called her a liar, said all sorts of horrible things about her.
Called her a wacko on that CNN town hall.
A wacko, and she's going to collect damages again, and probably much bigger punitive damages, because the point of punitive damages is to punish you for bad behavior so you don't do it again. And he just goes right out and does it. And that's because Donald really believes, and I've known this for almost all the 35 years I've known Donald really believes he's special, he's different, that whatever he says, that makes it real. He creates his own reality, and that he's not subject to the law. He may have to maneuver and manipulate and whatnot, but the law is for you and me. It's not for him. And he's not unique about this among some very wealthy people.
I mean, sadly, David, there's some truth to the fact that he's never really had to pay the piper on many things. Now, you could say, for example, Trump University, you did have to pay the piper. You had to, cut a check for $25 million, and detail in your book the way he's been held to account a little bit along the way. But the real day of reckoning, David, the one where you go ding dong, the witch is dead. It ain't happened yet.
Well, and if you look at all of the penalties that he's paid, he's actually come out ahead. He hired 400, to use his term, illegal immigrants to work on Trump Tower, and didn't pay them. He made them partial payments only when they threatened to throw or hang his overseer over the side of the building. And then when they got their cash payments, they went to a table, and there was a mob guy sitting there who took a slice of their pay, a fat slice of their cash pay, which was essentially minimum wage. In today's money, it was $11 an hour. And when Donald ultimately had to pay up, he paid up far less than if he paid properly what he should have done in the first place. When he got fined by the casino commission in Atlantic City, again and again, the fines were far less than the cost of the benefit to him of the wrongdoing.
Does it's being suggested here in the chat, and it's not unreasonable to suggest it. Does the notion of him getting some judgment, ultimately being confined to, a house arrest or whatever, or even if you, in some fantastical way, the guy goes off to prison, any GOP president would pardon him. Isn't that likely the case? I mean, it would.
That's an interesting question. I think that would be a very difficult move. If you had a GOP president who won by a large margin and was aligned with Trump, yes, but would Ron DeSantis do this? Not very likely.
No, I doubt.
Saying about him. And remember, if Trump, who at this stage is likely to get the Republican nomination, virtually certain of it at this point, if he were to be tried, convicted, and incarcerated, he can still serve as president of the United States. The only way he could be removed would be if he's impeached by the House and then convicted by the Senate. And I suspect if he were behind bars or even under house arrest, that enough senators would get together that we get the necessary 2/3 majority to remove him from office, because it's just untenable. On the other hand, given how crazy a lot of American politics are right now, what we're seeing go on with these massive efforts to deny the vote, to make it easier to possess weapons of war. There's a big effort right now underway in Texas to allow a state official who's appointed by the governor to decide whether votes will be counted or not. And it's apparently aimed entirely at the blue dots, the bits of Texas. Who knows? I mean, we're really in a period of very crazy, hard to understand politics. I told my students before our last class that if when I was in junior high school or high school, if some teacher had said the day will come when the Republicans and a Republican president will side with the Kremlin against American intelligence agencies, I would have gone to the principal's office and said, you need to get a psychiatric evaluation to this teacher. Look what's happened. Look what's happened.
It's under the guise of wanting to de-escalate or wanting not to be part of any kind of military incursion or battle, right, in Europe.
I'm sorry?
Isn't it? That's done under the when you say siding with Russia, I just want to be clear on it. Yeah.
Well, first of all, Trump said, I trust Putin. And
right.
Virtually the next sentence said, I don't trust any of the American intelligence agencies.
Yeah.
And they have a number of Republicans in Congress, like Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, who don't want us involved in Ukraine and have taken up the side of Vladimir Putin. I tweeted earlier today a video that's at the New York Post, of all places, showing, it's pretty gruesome. It shows how the Wagner Group, the mercenaries, when they capture Ukrainian soldiers, they don't follow the rules of war and take them as prisoners, as the Ukrainians are doing with Russian soldiers. They execute them. And this video is the execution of a Russian soldier by the Wagner Group. And they do it by putting you next to a stone abutment and smashing your head in with a sledgehammer. Wow. I mean, it's really monstrous people.
I want to pivot, but stay with a little bit of this Trump stuff only because of another revelation. I think the first was, I thought, the Ty Cobb statement that sort of suggested, hey, they've got him when it comes to the covering up of the documents in the face of...
They've got him there, Mark.
Yeah. So now let's go to this. Special counsel Jack Smith's team issued a subpoena for information about former President Donald Trump's foreign deals during the time he took office. All right. This is when he was president. The subpoena specifically sought details on the Trump Organization's real estate licensing and development deals in China, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, Kuwait, Oman, and France. These date all the way back to 2017.
Yeah. Donald ran in 2015 and 16 saying that he would not do any foreign deals. Well, that was a lie, like many things Donald says. He did do foreign deals, and I detail some of them, particularly in India, where astonishing roadblocks were cleared for Donald's projects once he became president. And the usual bureaucratic difficulties that afflict business in India just magically disappeared. I was told by a very high-level general, a former diplomat, and a Canadian a national security person in separate conversations that Donald was doing all sorts of business activities and there was money flowing in very suspicious ways. And all of them said this came from intercepts. We intercept not only email and telephone conversations that go overseas, but FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Center, also tracks financial transactions. I once had the head of FinCEN tell me that I asked him, well, somebody made a $19.95 purchase in a Malaysian hardware store that was crucial to some terrorist investigation in the US. And he cut me off and said, give me enough resources and we'll find it. Because things are digital, you know, you can scoop up these records, and the National Security Agency has computers beyond anything that we mere mortals deal with. But I couldn't prove that Donald was doing any of these things. I could only prove where there was a public record, like the India deals. But it would not surprise me one bit to find out that people were putting money in Donald's pocket, or if not cash, making arrangements. And if I were his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, I would be very worried now. Jared Kushner, who, remember, had to repeatedly submit his SF-86 form. You have to resubmit that once. You're probably not going to get a security clearance. And he and his wife couldn't even match up their ownership claims.
They didn't get security clearance by the book. They had to get Donald Trump to Bigfoot it.
Over the objections of seasoned experts in this field, he was given security clearances. Then he began, Malcolm Nance has reported, ordering up massive amounts of data from the Middle East. Shortly after this, you'll recall that the MBS, the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, had all these wealthy Saudis arrested. One of them was murdered and held in the prison of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Saudi Arabia. And then after Trump is out of office, Jared gets a $2 billion infusion of money to manage from MBS, Saudi state funds. And the New York Times comes up with these documents showing that all the financial advisors to the Saudi family said, don't do business with this guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has no track record. He's high risk. His fees are absolutely astronomically out of sight. And they went ahead and did the deal anyway. Well, that was not an act of charity. There's something else going on here. And in all likelihood, it's tied up with the murder of the American journalist for the Washington Post, Jamal Khashoggi.
And it is a reminder to all of us that his last official trip at taxpayer expense was to Saudi Arabia.
Right.
And then he gets out, and I mean, that is to say, out of, quote, government service, and he opens that fund you're talking about, and it's all with Saudi money, $2 billion, essentially all with Saudi money.
I suspect there's a lot there, but the most important thing on Trump is going to be the issue of the national security documents and the lying, denying. We're never going to know for sure what Trump told Putin, what secrets of ours he gave away, what American agents or assets he compromised intentionally or through his own hubris, largely because we have other national security interests to protect.
I see.
But on the lying and denying about the documents, I mean, Sandy Berger spent time in prison because he took one page, folded up, put it in his pocket, and walked out of a SCIF, a secure facility for looking at such documents.
I mean, all that stuff from that time seems so quaint compared to what we're talking about now. You know?
Yep.
David, love our time together. Thank you so much for making time for us every Tuesday. And you're a fan favorite. So We love exploiting you.
Take care.
Yeah, good to talk to you, David Cay Johnston. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.